President Muhammadu Buhari speaks to Nigerians, reacts to acts of lawlessness accompanied the End SARS protests, directs security agencies to maintain law and order. Eminent Nigerians continue to sue for peace and more decisive measures taken to tackle security in Nigeria. This is Panorama. I am Noleen Abel-Ameh. In furtherance of his genuine efforts at finding lasting solutions to the End SARS protest in parts of the country, President Muhammadu Buhari held a virtual meeting with the nation's former leaders. State House correspondent Adamu Sambo reports that the high-level engagement is coming barely 24 hours after his nationwide broadcast, as well as National Security Council meeting. 5 former heads of state participated at the online meeting. Details of this shall come your way in our next bulletin. President Muhammadu Buhari has formally appealed to the End SARS protesters in parts of the country to resist the temptations of being used by subversive elements to cause chaos with the aim of truncating Nigeria's nascent democracy. In a nationwide broadcast, the president made a case for the youth to discontinue the street protest, constructively engage government in finding solutions, and take advantage of the various well-thought-out initiatives designed to make their lives better and more meaningful. State House correspondent Adamu Sambo has the details.
The choice to demonstrate peacefully is a fundamental right of citizens.
This right to protest, President Muhammadu Buhari, however, emphasized, also imposes on the demonstrators the responsibility to respect the rights of other citizens and the necessity to operate within the law. As a democratic government, he said the federal government listened to and carefully evaluated the 5 points demand of the protesters, as a result of which SARS was immediately scrapped and measures put in place towards addressing the other demands.
The promptness with which we have acted seemed to have been misconstrued as a sign of weakness and twisted by some for their selfish, unpatriotic interests. The result of this is clear to all observers. Human lives have been lost, acts of sexual violence have been reported, 2 major correctional facilities were attacked and convicts freed, public and private properties completely destroyed or vandalized, the sanctity of the palace of a peacemaker, the Oba of Lagos, has been violated.
President Buhari described as painful that these acts of lawlessness were executed in the name of End SARS protests, saying there's no way whatsoever to connect these bad acts to legitimate expression of grievance of the nation's youth.
The spreading of deliberate falsehood and misinformation through the social media in particular, that this government is oblivious to the pains and plight of the citizens is a ploy to mislead the unwary within and outside Nigeria into unfair judgment and disruptive behavior. On the contrary, both our deeds and words have shown how committed this administration has been to the well-being and welfare of citizens, even with the steadily dwindling revenues and the added responsibilities and restrictions due to the coronavirus pandemic. No Nigerian government in the past has methodically and seriously approached poverty alleviation like we have done.
While reaffirming federal government's commitment to preserving the unity of the country, the president urged the youth to take the part of honor by ending the street protests, as well as resisting attempts by subversive elements to destabilize the country and truncate democracy.
For you to do otherwise will amount to undermining national security and the law and order situation. Under no circumstances will this be tolerated. This government respects and will continue to respect all the democratic rights and civil liberties of the people, but it will not allow anybody or groups to disrupt the peace of our nation. And I call on all Nigerians to go about their normal businesses.
President Buhari, who enjoined security agencies to protect lives and property of all law-abiding citizens, paid tribute to the police personnel who lost their lives in the line of duty. He also used the opportunity to thank members of the international community for their concern about the ongoing developments in Nigeria, saying, however, that they should seek to know all the facts available before either taking a position, rushing to judgment, or making hasty pronouncements. From the State House, Adamu Sambu, NTA News.
Meanwhile, President Muhammadu Buhari has directed the nation's security and intelligence agencies to do whatever is necessary within the limits of the law towards bringing to a halt the acts of lawlessness that accompanied the End SARS protests in parts of the country, which he described as intolerable. The president gave the directive at an extraordinary meeting of the National Security Council, as explained by the National Security Advisor, Babagana Mongono.
It appears now that the riots are taking a different dimension, an unwanted dimension. And Mr. President is very, very concerned about this development and does not want a situation in which everything breaks down and results in anarchy, in lawlessness, and people taking the law into their own hands. So far, the government has been able to concede to the demands of the protesters. Then it also is logical for the protesters, for those that are aggrieved also, to take a step back, take stock of their activities, and come to a meeting point with government and its agencies. It is not Mr. President's desire to see any unwanted loss of lives, and he is determined to ensure that things do not cascade into an unpleasant situation. Mr. President has directed that government should do whatever is necessary within the confines of legitimacy, within the confines of legality, in order to bring about an agreeable resolution to this crisis. It is extremely important for the youth to understand that if the atmosphere is not conducive for dialogue and for understanding, we can't have any peaceful resolution. The security agencies have been asked to apply as much restraint as possible. But then again, the youth should also understand that sometimes pushing their luck might also result in unwanted issues. So it is very, very important for everyone to take stock of what has already happened and not give a dark impression of this country to the international community.
We earlier on told you that President Muhammadu Buhari held a virtual meeting with the nation's former leaders. The report is now ready. All right, we're having glitches there, bringing you that report. Moving on, Northern Governors Forum has called on Nigerian youth to be vigilant and advised those involved in wanton destruction of property in some part of the country to desist. Chairman of the Forum and Governor of Plateau State, Bako Simon Lalong, made the appeal while briefing journalists at the end of their emergency meeting in Kaduna. Muhammad Umar Ajingi reports.
The governors settling down to deliberate on recent developments in the country, particularly the NSAS protests that turned violent in some parts of the country. For about 6 hours, the governors met behind closed doors. They expressed worry and wonder why the NSAS protest persists despite the approval of their demands by the president. The governors therefore called for establishment of Judicial Commission of Inquiry to investigate the level of destruction and killings during the protests. The forum urged the federal government to look into the possibility of ending ASUU strike, as they observe that most of the youths are idle, therefore vulnerable to be engaged in dubious acts.
Forum also notes the heavy presence of external influencers, both locally and internationally, and call on all citizens, particularly community leaders and youth groups, to be very vigilant and report the presence of such people to security agencies. The forum calls for comprehensive and robust reforms in the police force. She supports various federal government initiatives put in place by federal government and will ensure that they are fast-tracked and given more impetus by the 19 northern governors.
The 19 northern governors commended the resilience of the northern youths and leadership qualities shown by some prominent Nigerians by persuading the youths to embrace dialogue. In Kaduna, I am Muhammad Umar Ajingi, NTA News.
Anambra State Governor Willie Obiano announces the imposition of a 24-hour curfew in the state effective 8 p.m. Thursday. Governor Willie Obiano made the announcement during a statewide broadcast. The governor says the curfew has become necessary due to unpleasant incident and rising tension recorded in the state. He directs the closure of all schools and markets in the state, all large gatherings in any form also banned. He warns security agencies to resist all forms of provocation and use of extreme force while enforcing compliance. The governor called on stakeholders, including the clergy, traditional rulers and youth leaders, among others, to speak to the protesters on the need to embrace peace and shun violence, especially in the destruction of federal institutions' properties. Governor Obiano announced that the sum of 200 million naira has been approved to compensate families of those affected by SARS brutality in the state. Similarly, the Imo State Governor Hope Uzodinma has condemned the killing of security operatives and destruction of a police station by hoodlums in the state. He made this known in a broadcast in response to the hijack of the End SARS protest. Bright Ebucho reports.
Despite the curfew imposed by the Imo State government to prevent escalation of violence by those who recently hijacked the NSAS protest in Imo State, some hoodlums have continued to violate the stay-at-home order, engaging in the destruction of lives and property. Governor Hope Uzodinma, in a statewide broadcast, condemns the ugly incident of Wednesday, October 21, 2020, which resulted in the murder of security operatives, burning of police stations, destruction and harassment of innocent citizens in the state. While sympathizing with the affected families, Governor Uzodinma assures of justice for the victims, stressing that the actions of the hoodlums have set the state backwards.
The state government is, to say the least, shocked at the level of reckless violence unleashed by these merchants of unprovoked bestiality. If these agents of death and destruction ever believed in the noble cause of the NSAS protesters, they would have been minded to admit that they cannot seek cure for brutality with even more brutality.
He further appeals to residents of the state to comply with the directive on the curfew imposed by the state government until further notice.
In these circumstances, the government wants to make it absolutely clear that the 24-hour curfew announced on October 20th is still very much in force. Security agencies have been charged to enforce the curfew to the letter. This means that there should be no movement of both vehicles and human beings in the state for now.
In Owerri, Bright Ebuchu, NTA News.
From Owerri, we bring you back to the FCT, where all affected victims of the End SARS protesters in FCT will be compensated. Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Mohammed Musa Bello, gave this indication when he led a team on the spot assessment to Apo and Duse communities in Abuja. Shaibu Nozia Kubu was there and brought back this report.
The first port of call was Apu community, where FCT Minister Mohammed Musa Bello, in company of the FCT Minister of State and other stakeholders, met with the affected victims who are still counting their losses, especially the petty traders whose means of livelihood were also destroyed. At Dute community in Buari Area Council, the team inspected the customary court and a police station that were razed down during the protest with vehicles destroyed. FCT Minister, while sympathizing with the victims, promised to compensate those affected.
I have also seen the extent of damages, and we have already set up a small committee to be able to assess the damages, and we are going to work towards making sure that whoever has lost something is compensated within what is possible. We all need to work together to protect lives, protect livelihoods, and above all, to ensure that harmony and peace returns to Abuja.
The minister, however, appealed for calm as he urges political and community leaders to continue to preach peace in their domain. Shaibu Onozeyakubu, NTA News.
It's Panorama on the network service of the NTA. Let's pause for a break. We'll be back shortly.
Recent genuine concerns and agitations by Nigerians about the excessive use of force and, in some cases, extrajudicial killings and wrongful conduct by means of the Nigerian police force. The disbanding of SARS is only the first step in our commitment to extensive police reform in order to ensure that the primary duty of the police and other law enforcement agencies remains the protection of lives and livelihoods of our people. We will also ensure that all those responsible for misconduct or wrongful acts are brought to justice. We also deeply regret the loss of life of the young man in Oyo State during the recent demonstrations. I have directed that the circumstances of his death should be thoroughly investigated. Meanwhile, it is important to recognize that the vast majority of men and women of the police force are hardworking and diligent in performing their duties. The few bad eggs should not be allowed to tarnish the image and reputation of the force.
Thank you for rejoining us on Panorama. The Lagos State Caucus of the House of Representatives has condemned in strong terms the invasion of the Palace of the Oba of Lagos. The caucus, while briefing the press, described the attack as a sacrilege. National Assembly correspondent Lamia Lee reports.
The Lagos State Caucus also condemned the attack on critical infrastructure in parts of the state. It called on the protesting youths to support the governor to restore peace as their legitimate requests are being attended to by authorities, including compensation to victims as demanded by the House of Representatives.
We therefore appeal to the youth to stop all protests because their actions have been hijacked by others with premeditated agenda, using social media to misrepresent and spread fake news, to incite violence, looting, vandalization of private and public assets.
In a related development, Young Parliamentarians Forum of the 9th National Assembly has called for the reconvening of an emergency session of the National Assembly to discuss alleged killing of peaceful protesters.
We implore the federal government to provide leadership in national reconciliation, peace and justice through inclusive and transparent dialogues with citizens, and ensure individuals and institutions who violate constitutionally guaranteed rights are held to account.
In the meantime, House Leader Alhassan Ado Dogwa, during an engagement with Civil Society and Legislative Advocacy Center, has urged Nigerian youths to embrace peace, stressing that now is the time to apply the brakes.
No well-meaning Nigerian, a leader or a led, will sleep a happy man today with what is happening on our streets.
It needs, genuine intervention from both policy makers and legislative intervention to address some of these problems.
The centre noted the role of the legislature in addressing ills in society, like corrupt practices, through legislative intervention. From the National Assembly, Lami Ali, NTA News.
Eminent Nigerians continue to sue for peace after weeks of protest against police brutality turned chaotic. The latest appeal is from Catholic Archbishop Emeritus of Abuja, John Cardinal Onaikon. The cleric sympathized with the youth but wants them to now give peace a chance.
Many people have listened to you. You have to give people time to respond adequately. If you continue for too long, things can get out of hand. We sympathize with those who have lost their lives in this crisis. May their souls rest in peace. We also sympathize with those who have lost a lot of livelihood. Everybody will agree that no matter what your good intentions are, you cannot allow chaos to ensue. Because at the end of the day, if the country descends into chaos, everybody will suffer.
He also has a word of advice for the government. After all the dust settles, Cardinal Onaikon advises that things can no longer be business as usual. Peace cannot be kept by force. It can only be achieved by understanding. These words of renowned theoretical physicist Albert Einstein re-echoed when some youth in Cross River State joined in the clamor for an end to the nationwide NSAS protest to allow government to implement their demands. More so, that the president has addressed the nation on the development. Umar Basi Edit has details.
These are the youths from Cross River State preaching the gospel of peace. From one street to the other, they moved to speak against violence. Coming under the aegis of the South-South Legacy Group, they plead for dialogue as a way to meaningful resolution in the face of escalating violence.
I think it is time we try to also give government a window to begin implementations, because war is senseless, and you know that peace is also priceless. And we are talking about infrastructural decay, and now destructions are beginning to be done to those infrastructures. So how do we do two wrongs? Two wrongs cannot make a right.
Our youths are dying because of the violent situation. Now we are saying that Cross River State will not take part in the youth. Yes, we are agitating for NSAS. It is true, but NSAS, we have passed the message to the government. And as such, we are saying that the youth should give the government some time to implement those things we are asking for.
Others are hopeful that government will be sincere in addressing the demands of the youths for a better future.
Tomorrow, a better one, and give us a kind of a hopeful future.
The government should recognize us. There should be peace and unity.
With the NSAS protest now hijacked by hoodlums, Observers say it has become necessary for the youth to be more strategic in making their demands to check for the loss of lives and property. In Calabar, Umar Basadate, NTA News.
And to sports news, Nigeria now 4th in Africa in the latest FIFA ranking. Tamara Ibiwe is here with details on our sports update.
Nigeria Super Eagles dropped 3 spots from 29th to 32nd position in the monthly FIFA ranking released Thursday. This is coming after recording 1 loss and a draw in the international friendlies against Algeria and Tunisia. Nigeria is now 4th on the continent behind Senegal, Tunisia and Algeria. The top 5 in the world remain unchanged.
It actually underscores the importance for the Super Eagles to improve and to win games because, of course, a ranking system is very, very important. It gives a team more coefficient and, of course, it gives them more respect.
Staying with football, newly appointed technical advisor of Kano Pillars Football Club, Lionel Sosia, has been unveiled. The French tactician who arrived in Nigeria on Wednesday is expected to pilot the team in the domestic and continental scenes. Pillars will represent Nigeria in CAF Confederation Cup, apart from playing the League and Federation Cup. Lionel Emmanuel Sosia has previously worked in some African countries like Cameroon, South Africa and Zambia. He signed a 1-year contract with Kano Pillars. In tennis, Roger Federer is aiming to be fit enough for the 2021 Australian Open next January after 2 knee surgeries sidelined him for the most of 2020. The 39-year-old hasn't played since January 30 when he lost to Novak Djokovic in straight sets in Melbourne. The 6-time Australian Open winner says he's working to rebuild his strength and stamina without pain and has suffered no setback. Tamara Ibiwe, NTA News.
And that concludes Panorama. Thank you for watching. Stand against rape and rapists.